Okay, good morning, Ecotone. Let me get my headphones on here so I can hear what I'm doing. So, Ecotone Gardens, you are the first and only member at this point. I love it. And you've got my undivided attention this morning. If you run out of questions, there was a couple of unanswered ones from last time that or one in particular that I didn't have a strong answer for anyway, but I did a little bit of homework and felt like I could touch on that later. And also, we'll um, delve into a couple other ones that I've seen comments or questions about over the last while. I've been pretty bad about putting out the weekly shows lately because I was traveling for a few weeks, but I am back now and I will play catch up. But either way, Ecotone, what would you like to ask me this morning, man? How was Spain? Spain was lovely. It was, I always enjoy visiting Spain, and it was my third time in the Basque Country, and it's a really distinct part of Spain, and I really get a kick out of the culture, particularly the food culture. But the Spanibus was good. It had been I think 25 years in Barcelona, and I'd never been to it there. And it was my first Spanibus, and it was the first one in Bilbao. So that was part of the draw for me. I've been to Barcelona many times and less excited about going there just because it's a bigger city, more traffic, and I don't like the aromas of the downtown, let's say. But overall, it was great to see so many friends. I was joking with a bunch of them because some of them like Carullo, I hadn't seen him. We were working it out. It was 24 years. So I thought, I should go to a show every 25 years or whatever, at least. But yeah, super, super fun. And I liked it was a little more intimate show in Bilbao's, but it was also just fun to see. There's so many new seed companies or new to me seed companies and all kinds of visitors and strange contraptions from paraphernalia to you name it. So I got a kick out of that. And I'd been to Berlin for ICBC just before that. And that was a very different show, of course, but highly worthwhile. I was very glad I did. Lined up lots of good business there from seed to flower to Verosense licensing and all kinds of fun stuff. Uh, Pardon me, a little bit of the allergies right now. I came home with a cold and hit tree pollen season and it was a double whammy. So I've been taking some antihistamines and doing the neti pot thing. Right on, you got the gargoyle going. Now, Ecotone, where are you, if you don't mind me asking? I can't remember. Um, I'm glad you've got the gargoyle going, though, because there's some very nice smoke to be had in those. I've seen some very happy people with them. They were out of the Genetican seeds from Thailand and sold under Seeds of Anarchy brand in the US. So those were the 2024 releases of the Seeds of Anarchy lineup. The 2025 Seeds of Anarchy lineup was only available in Europe, whereas the 2024s, including the Gargoyle, they're only available Thailand and US. But I think you should have some fun with it. I've seen some people pretty happy. Oh yeah, yeah. You sent me the 3.1. I I know exactly who you are, but I didn't associate your handle with you. That's so cool. That's so cool. Yeah, man. I've got your mug. You know that beer mug right there, the Stein you gave me. Yeah, yeah. That's super fun. I can't wait to get some of that 3.1 growing out myself, man. That's really cool. For people that don't know what we're talking about, in the 3.1 was Ecotone was growing out Sweet Tooth 3 for a very long time. And he had a plant that he really loved, and he had to shut down at one point. And he did an S1 with it. So when he got going again, he could start the seeds and pick out one that resembled most closely the ideal for his situation wherever he was putting them. I think he does some in the greenhouse and some outside. And correct me if I'm wrong, brother, but either way, he found one that was a dead ringer for the Sweet Tooth 3, so we called it the 3.1. So that's that clone has been out through Gabby, Staten Island, throughout the US now. So that's really fun to see the continuation of the I bet you I bet they're doing great in the greenhouse. We seem to be getting a warm warm, warm spring. It's gonna be a hot summer. Yeah, like you said, dead ringer out of about 50 or so seeds. That's pretty impressive. Yeah, really fun. I like the S exclamation mark instead of the S1. That's fun. So, yeah, it's unfortunate, situation in Washington State that they aren't very accepting, let's say, of homegrown, and that's always a disappointment in the regs when they shut out homegrown and say you have to buy weed in shops. You're still pushing against it, and I can appreciate that. It's not it's not acceptable. Oh, you got medical only in Washington, the 15 plant limit. I see. So there's some exception. I didn't realize that, so that's good to know. See, you have the AMA, and I learned something. Medical only, 15 plant limit. So that gives people, a little latitude for having their home patch. That's better than nothing. That's for sure. So what else should we touch on today? You've had the medical for 15 years. Wow. I've been following the pictures you've been sending me over the years of it in your backyard in the burbs, and it looked great. It was super shrubs. You had some beautiful trees growing there, and yeah, you do such a good job with them. And I had such a nice time with you when you came up to visit years ago at the winery. That was fun, and obviously, I've got that stein and the place of honor here at the Dab Bar. I hope you can make it up for another visit sometime, man. And I've got a guest room here for you. If you want to come up and stay for a weekend sometime, you're always welcome. So some people might be wondering why I'm just getting the questions from Ecotone. And it's because after the first three public AMAs, we've moved to a members only version. And the, the idea was it would cut down on a bit of the clutter. The last time we did one for the public, I always have a hard time keeping up with all the questions I was trying to answer, too many too fast maybe, but also there's people airing grievances and beefs that they have with each other, and it's just a wrong venue for it, let's say. So I can appreciate, people giving a heads up about others that are problems, but it's just a distraction from what we're here to talk about right now. That's yeah, crazy plants for Washington State. Yes, sir. Anyway, we'll have some fun when you get back up here. Get a few beers in us and a few fatties and float around the pool. The season is here. I just took the cover off the pool yesterday, and of course it's all green, so now I've got some work to do to get it all cleaned up and ready. If I had to select, here's the question. If I had to select only 5 mother plants to represent the foundational building blocks of modern cannabis for future generations, which ones would make the cuts? This is a really, really good question. And I think there's, 5 is it's doable. Everything can be answered that way, but I'm just trying to think how far back we go. Like really, I think the foundational for the modern stuff, so much of it will be derived from Northern Lights, skunk, haze, and then we gotta pick 2 more that are the variations in the on, not necessarily variations of the other ones, but which would be the other 2? Because I think it's pretty safe to say the Northern Lights, skunk, and haze have very strong influence. But since then, those date back to, well, I don't know how far exactly, but at least the 80s and maybe some roots in the 70s there. So if that's what we want to call modern cannabis, or maybe we're thinking about what's happened since 2000, like if we said in this millennium, what lines have made a big difference? I think if we went that way, we probably have to see some Chem D or Gorilla Glue and the cookies. These, let's say, modern classics. So I don't know if I went for the earlier versions, what my other two would be. Where I just named those three, and then for the millennial lines, I don't know. What would you take? What would be your other two for the previous millennia, the pre-2000, and and what would be your 5 for the post-2000? I'm asking you because I can't, totally decide, and I'm a little out of the loop on a lot of the American ones. I don't always, try them until much later. There was some confusion for me a while ago because a lot of people had told me that Skittles was grapefruit based or sweet tooth based, and I'd never seen the clone only Skittles. I'd never even knew it was a clone only until a couple months ago. I was corrected on that because I didn't know. I'd only seen stuff called Skittles that friends had given me in BC, and they were showing me different phenos of it. So obviously they'd grown them out from seeds, and there was unmistakable grapefruit or sweet tooth influence in those. But then other people told me those aren't true Skittles. The true Skittles was a clone only. That's nothing like that. So, you know, I'm I'm not at the forefront of every bag seed, hype conundrum that comes out in the gene pool. But I think it's pretty fun to learn and get opinions because people will have you'd get a different answer probably in a lot of Europe over the States. Like in the UK, they'd go, "Oh, UK cheese was very foundational to a lot of stuff," which was predominantly skunk, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't had any experience growing out some of the seed junky stuff. I've never grown any of that out, but I've smoked it from people that have. And those are some distinctive lines, that permanent marker and crosses of that I'd tried. And I never grew out anything of the Sherbinskis, but I've smoked various people's takes on it. And I think, they're really nice contributions to the modern pool. And I liked the the Miracle Alien cookies, the Mac one from Cap. I'd tried some that friends had grown out in BC, which was very nice quality. And the time it really stood out for me was in Bangkok a couple years ago. I was fortunate enough to be invited to judge the first CanX Asia, which was super, super event. But, the blind tasting went well, and there were 6, VIP judges, of which I was one, and I was sort of helping the judges along with sort of a tutored tasting, let's say, of the numbered cultivars. So we didn't know, who grew it or what it was or whatnot, but I did unequivocally pick the Mac one as the winner, which was when it was revealed to me. That was the most impressive, and it was grown in living soil by a young Thai guy in Bangkok, and it was phenomenal. It was really, really well done, and it was a pleasure to smoke. And I got some leftovers from the judging pile. They said, "Oh, what did you like? Take some more of that." So I took some of that to Copayam, actually. I remember sharing giving a little sample jar of it with a bud to the chef at this little resort I was staying, and his name was Rambo, and I'd posted a picture of Rambo with it in the past where he's looking at the bud in the can, and it was the best bud he'd ever seen, and he was just floored, and he loaded it up in his bamboo bong and took a hit. And you just see the smile and like, oh yeah. And that was the first time he'd tasted that Mac, and you could tell like he was just absolutely over the moon in love with it. And it was really a nice herb, very distinctive. So I'd consider the Mac one of the modern classics, let's say, and I think it gets used a lot. But for you, post 2000, haze crossed with sweet tone varieties. Oh, here's another good question. Did you do any projects with Felix, RIP, Swiss, Felix Couts of Owl Seeds? We didn't do any breeding projects together, but we were good friends and we hung out a lot and we did some business moving weight with him. So we certainly did successful business with Felix. He was a super guy to deal with, actually. And he was, crazy as the day is long, but just as passionate about his seed lines and making hash. And, he was really into it. He's, fanatical, fanatical Felix. It was very sad to hear that he took his own life a number of years back. He was really, he always had a bit of a tortured soul kind of thing to him, and but he was so into the plant in a way that I didn't see that often in Switzerland. He was really wild about it. And the one thing I really remember about Felix research, because he was, a hardcore grower, but he was also like to do some research, and he had his four varieties on owl seeds, Couts being owl, I guess. Anyways, he had Heaven, Purpurea Ticinese, Grandiflora, and a fourth one. Now it's bugging me. I can't remember what the fourth one was. But anyway, he was always very coy about the origins of it. He always wanted to try his Purpurea. Yeah, the Purpurea. It's like Purpea. Yeah, if I recall, Purpurea Ticinese. And anyways, they were very distinctive. And he grew those same four at three different locations. Well, at least three different locations. But the one year he did some research, he had it planted at 200 meters above sea level, 600 meters above sea level, and 1,500 meters above sea level up in the Alpine. At his grandfather had left his father this alpine cabin, and he'd hire a helicopter to take up like a pallet of soil for him so he could do a patch up there. And the interesting thing that he had found, because he had COAs done at university for the same, like say, Heaven clone from each of the sites, and the yields were much greater at the lower altitudes, but the potency was much greater at the higher altitudes. But, little knee-high plants rather than big bushy Christmas trees. So it was really a different situation, but it was really fun because I like to hang out with the guy. We always had a riot, and yes, I totally miss him. His dream was that once he had his business affairs in order, he wanted to come to BC and go fishing at a lake up north and just have peace and quiet, just fishing with the loons. And I'm sad that I don't think he ever got to do that. So it was his dream. That was his top of his bucket list, was to come to Canada and go fishing up north. The Purpurea was not a super strong plant, but a very resistant plant. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that's right, crazy. Not many can say they've completed research like that, so and this was going way back, like, he did all this, you know, I don't remember the year it was, it might have been 2000 or 2001, it was a long time ago, but, yeah, he was very dedicated to his craft, and he wasn't always trying out new stuff. He'd got those 4 that he liked and kinda got them dialed in, and he made multiple generations of each of them and kept them pure. I never grew out his seeds, and I never grew out his clones, and I don't know that he shared them all as clones, but he definitely sold them as seeds. But I didn't feel the need to grow them out because every time I'd go visit him, I was in Lugano and he was in Locarno, so it was about 45 minutes away, I think, if I recall, and it was always a nice, drive over there. Ticino is such a beautiful canton and, you know, really scenic place, and we always would, go out for dinner and drink lots of wine together and smoke a lot of hash, and he was, very much a hash smoker. He smoked some grass too, but he's very much a hash smoker, and just a neat guy, I really feel like I hope things are well with his family, he had kids and his wife, and difficult, like, he was building chimneys, he was, like, multi-generational. I don't know that there's a name for it, but a chimney builder. Anyways, he that was his sort of day job craft that he'd learned, but he'd kinda transitioned into full-time cannabis, but he still identified as a, you know, multi-generational chimney builder, but he'd built some amazing places, like, with stone, and he knew a lot about that. It was always interesting to see his work at his house and other places. Talented guy. I really, do miss him. It's too bad. The purpurea wasn't a strong plant, but for smoking, but it was very resistant plant to grow. It did have a pleasant lift. I'm guessing it had more cannabinoids than just THC. So next question, how close are we to seeing those sterile genetics becoming the industry standard for large scale outdoor production where cross contamination is a major risk? We are getting very close. It was a good chunk of my trip to Berlin and Bilbao was centered around um, getting these agreements to certain large producers and also onboarding a couple new breeders that want to play along. I, you know, Everything seems to take longer than you think, and it's always the case. But I would hope within 5 years, I would hope within 5 years that it became an industry standard because it's absolutely crucial for outdoor growers to use infertile genetics. We're talking about the vero sense infertile genetics. And it's important for greenhouse and indoor people who may not have a problem with, you know, accidental pollinations, but it's never a problem until it is. There's been warehouses of indoor in Canada that have had accidental pollinations. There's been lots of problems like that, but it's far more common to be a problem outdoors where there's no air filtration. So it's outdoors, it's your neighbor's pollen you got to worry about. Indoors, it's the odd banana in genetics you're trying out that get triggered for whatever reason. And people don't like getting seeds and weed for consumption. So I think it's really gonna be a game changer. The power play I was, pushing on in, Berlin had to do with talking with, insurance companies that do crop insurance for cannabis. So, there's not that many, but there are some, and large medical grows are now starting to get crop insurance, and it's gonna behoove the insurers to say if you want insurance against accidental pollination, if you have a recall for seeds in your cannabis, it's considered foreign matter in the EU pharmacopoeia. Any foreign matter can be up to 2%, which is still pretty high. Um, but if they say you want to have insurance against accidental pollinations, you have to use these certified seedless cultivars so that it's never a problem for you again. And Verosense is funny because it's triggered a lot of people, or some people, I should say. Most people think it's really cool and interesting, and some people think, "Oh my god, it's like stopping evolution," and it doesn't stop evolution any more than taking a picture stops time. You're just freezing a frame of it. For breeders, they don't need to go sterile in the pursuit of breeding. It's kind of like when you have an example, you have a specimen, you wanna lock it down and say, "This is how I want this to be remembered." It's kind of the final form, it's the final boss, as it were. But as far as breeding goes, you're still better off to have males and females and do your generations in dioecious manner. But once you find these specimens that you say, "Oh, this is gonna be perfect for production. It's exactly what we want," and that's when you wanna nail it to its infertile elevate it to its infertile version, and then it'll be more accessible for producers to sleep at night, that they don't have to worry about accidental pollination. And like you said, for outdoors, absolutely crucial. One of the Canadian LPs I spoke with, I didn't even know, but I was showing them the program, and the guy was like, "Dude, we are field farmers. Do you know what happened to us last year?" I was like, "No." He's like, "We got pollinated, everything, our whole field." So they're going to be signing up pretty soon, I'd expect. That's underway. It's it's really useful, and for breeders that want to get involved, we have a collaborators agreement for them. But even if I don't teach you how to make them, if you just find them on your own and you'd like them to be available through our sales team on our and through our catalog, because the sales team is going to be selling the VeroSense catalog to producers, but we haven't released the catalog yet because I've still got about 10 breeders developing the infertiles they want to launch on the catalog. And then we have one strong team to go out and pitch that to maybe the top 100 producers in the world. And we're not worried about getting it to every little producer. Eventually, it will. Everybody at home will have them too, and that's fine. I would love to see that, but I know that we can only contract the producers for the long term if it's not available to the public yet, or they're just gonna have their staff is gonna bring some in for nothing, and they won't have to worry about it. But it's rather than, it's I couldn't really understand even people's objections to it. One guy said, he's like, "This is a scam." I'm like, "How is it a scam to help breeders elevate their offering to the corporate cannabis crowd?" It's not, and it helps them sell where they maybe don't have a lot of traction right now. It's giving them another outlet for another genetics product, but it's not seed sales, it's clone licensing. It's very much a different process, and it's an asexual process, by the time we're releasing these. But we do have tissue culture lab partners in Thailand, in Canada, in the US, and in Austria who are going to be breaking these out. And we're also looking at adding another African site as well. So we're looking at Ghana and Morocco for that. So we'll see. Ghana's been dragging ass. The the regulators were really slow to come up with regs. And when they finally did, they were far from ideal as usual. But also, they're just dragging ass on getting the licenses out. So anyway, I've been patiently biding my time because I love a good equatorial site. and we have strong partners there to work with, and lots of land and unlimited water on the Volta River. There was the largest or second largest freshwater source in the world. So there's unlimited year-round water. We have a 400-hectare parcel, which is 1,000 acres, right on the river. So we'll never run out of fresh water. The There's also Aquasamba Dam is a little upriver from us, and that is a hydroelectric dam that powers most of the country. So the power lines aren't that far from from where we are either. So if we did need to juice up, a processing facility or something, we won't have trouble getting high voltage. But we'll see. It's still up in the air. And in Morocco, we have some other challenges there with the legal situation in Morocco. I don't know if it applies to all of the licensed farmers, but one of the biggest ones that I've been talking to, they're restricted to only planting Beldia, which is, nice in some ways that there's a strong focus on conservation of the native lines. But even that Beldia has kind of been a melting pot over the years, I think, of everybody that's brought seeds there. But the Beldia, is pretty established, and it is drought resistant. It's a plant for making hash, but I mean, the potency is not that much in it. It has a distinctive flavor profile, which is kind of nice to preserve the character of the Moroccan flavors and aromas, which are distinct. But to the modern hash consumer, let's say they're yesterday's flavors. So there's room for improvement, even just working within the native gene pool. But I don't know how receptive they are. And it's actually an edit from the king, who wanted to conserve the flavor of true Moroccan Beldia. So, and as you like, I mean, I was selling Siskaberry seeds to Moroccan farmers down in Algeciras in 2001, 2002. So that was really something to see all the seed going over there. Other, Dutch seed companies were selling them seed as well, and you're seeing the results back. Year later, you'd start seeing modern genetics hash coming out of Morocco, but it was still made sort of Moroccan traditional style. Some of it was being made in water and was kind of gray upon finishing. But nowadays, as it's traditionally a dry sift environment, when it gets cold and dry in the winter there, they do their sifting. And nowadays you'll see a whole lot of static operations. So the static sift separators, um, there's a number of companies selling them now, and there was a lot of booths at Spanibus. There had to be at least 3 or 4 different booths at Spanibus that were showing off their their static units. Your next question, beautiful. I love this. Did you see the bubble hash screen vacuum video? I've never felt so humbled by something so simple. And I know exactly what you're talking about. And that is a ring with the screen in it. I believe it's from a German guy whose handles Inspector Dabbit or something like that. Anyways, is absolutely brilliant. And I am in the exact same boat as you, because I used to use, I would still do it even if I had it, but I had one of those shakers called a palm maker, POLM for Dutch for pollen, and they used to call that, which is another story, but it's not pollen, it's for resin. But it was legal to collect pollen, illegal to make hash. So they sold as pollen shakers or pollen screens. So anyway, these had like 150 micron or something screen in two ends of a plastic tube that fit into each other. So you could put a screen over, stick the top of the tube in, and that stretched out the screen, and you had a taut screen, and it had a bottom part you could peel off where the resin would collect, and then the top part you could, put a half ounce of dry bud in there and shake it up, and resin would fall to the bottom. Anyway, I'd, you know, I was making more hash than than I would do that way. But what I realized was I want to vacuum the fine dust out, because if you just scrape it off, say you have a sifting screen on a table, whatever goes through the screen is sitting on the table, but that includes the stuff that's less than 25 microns, and that's just garbage really, it's just dust or dirt or silt or some sort. So it was very sensible that I'd learned from an Italian guy who had made a box out of 25 micron screen, and he would put his dry sift in there and then turn it around the box and vacuum out the dust from the dry sift. So I found that to be, brilliant idea, and I didn't want to build a box, but I just said, "Oh, I can take the screen out of this palm shaker, put in a 25 micron, and then use my shop vac from the bottom to suck out the dust." So I used it for like that for a long time, but I never occurred to me, this is why I feel humbled too, is because it never occurred to me to use it to vacuum the water out of wet sift. I could when I saw it, I was like, "Ah, genius. Why did I never think of it?" I was vacuuming dry sift for years just to pull out the dust. Never even occurred to me to use it for drying out wet sift, and that's saving a lot of people from getting freeze dryers, I think, because, the problem with water hash is getting it dry before it goes off, because it can go off pretty quickly if you just leave wet hash laying around. So getting it dry quickly is key. And with that vacuum technique, you suck so much water out of it so fast that it makes a big difference. I think that it's absolutely brilliant. I'm so glad the guy came up with it. And like you said, I've never felt so humbled by something so simple. It was just too easy. They thought, "Oh man, I'm retarded. I couldn't think of that." It doesn't matter. But I'm so glad he came up with it, because I think it's going to help a lot of people's wet hash game. And anybody that's been following me for a while knows my go-to is dry sift over water hash, and largely that is off. A lot of that is because of the drying, whereas dry sift, it's ready the second you sift it. You don't need to cure it any further if you don't want to. Obviously, you can, but it's just a brilliant advance. I really am so glad the guy figured that out. We can vacuum to get the water out of it. Brilliant. You're truly, truly right. It's going to change the game for a lot of people at home, because it's nice to see advances in the home tech, let's say, because most people at home aren't going to invest in multi-thousand-dollar machines to process their 15 plants from the backyard, right? And you use the vacuum to clean up after making bubble. Yeah, the thought never occurred to you. Yeah. No, I'm with you, brother. That was like, why didn't I think of that? But I was so happy they did. I haven't had a chance to put it in action because I haven't made any wet hash in a while, but I might do run a batch again. I have to go check out my bags. I have mix and match fallen apart old bag sets, and I do have some fresh frozen in the freezer that might be fun to run that way. So I might do a little water batch soon. For me, it's too late for doing dry sift now because it's warmed up, and I just like doing it in the winter when it's well below freezing, because you can just get through it so quick. I think the first time you used a vacuum seed separator was also a huge mind bender. Yeah, those are cool. Yeah, they're really neat little setup. When you can use household equipment for achieving some of these things, it's great, because I look at cannabis both as a hobbyist doing small scale at home, and also as a commercial guy that likes to deal in tonnage. So I see the different ways to go about it, and they're both a lot of fun. The easier the better, usually. If you can come up with simple ways to do things, it's always preferable. Like for the home static thing that I often do now is, having fooled around with static in various ways over the years, but mostly just as a little party trick to show people with, rub a balloon on my head and pull fluff out of, bounce the sift on the mat a little bit and pull fluff out with the balloon. And you can see it getting cleaner. So that was kind of fun, but obviously impractical to do any amount that way and not altogether the most efficient. But then I started just dumping it in different containers like a silicone bowl. So I have this one silicone bowl that's pretty small. It was a collapsible bowl for taking on a walk to put water in for your dog or something. So that little collapsible silicone bowl, wow, does it have a charge? So I could take some freshly sifted dry sift, put it in there, swirl it around the bowl, and pour it out into a second bowl. And the bowl is just coated with the garbage, you know. So the oil the oil of the glands is negative charge, so it doesn't stick to that silicone. And silicone can be made to have various charges depending on what you add to it. Like I've heard of silicone being mixed with aluminum powder before being poured into molds. So there's ways you can increase the static power of it, but it's very passive. It's a passive static. You don't need to plug it in; it's totally offline, and you can pour it from one to another, and all the fluff and positively charged stuff will stick to the bowl side. So you can really see it get cleaner very quick. And then you can wipe out that bowl and put it back in. Or that reversible bowl, I could just pop it out the one side and then the other side's clean, pour it back in, shake it around, and you can really polish up that sift just passing it back and forth between some bowls. You get a less of a charge in plastic, but it still works if you're somewhere dry and you've got the plastic charged up. So I've used plastic mixing bowls. I've used 5-gallon pails where, if you've got, say, you've got a Ziploc of dry sift, maybe you've vacuumed out the fines from it already, but it's still loose dry sift. You can put it in that 5-gallon pail, shake it up, as long as it's cold. If it's warm, the resin will stick to the pail, and that defeats the purpose. It's still got to be fairly cool and dry. So once you've put it through that one pail, you'll see a bunch of fluff stuck to the side of the pail. You can pour it into a second clean pail, repeat the process while you wipe out the first pail, and then pour it back into it. So you can go back and forth as many times as you need to or want to, but you'll see that resin becomes so clean it'll just melt on your fingers if you try and pick it up. Okay, so how long do I store hash? Well, that's a good question. And the oldest hash I have, and I'm not recommending it, this isn't well stored hash. This was hash somebody gave me because it was in his storage locker. He'd moved to Asia and had some bag sets and stuff that were in a storage locker. And then he decided he was never coming back to Canada. So he was cleaning out the locker. And he said, "Here's a duffel bag of my old hash making equipment." And in that bag, I did find some hash that was from 2005. It was Sweet Skunk Sift from 2005. And it was starting to oxidize, of course. It had kinda compressed itself into a loose log, so it was still very dry, and the outer bit was getting red, and then inside, when you broke the log open, it was still very blonde, and when we looked under the scope, you could really see the oxidation of the THC to CBN on the outer portion of it. And so I ended up saying, "Well, this is just kind of fun." But we pressed a bunch for rosin, and you could see it formed like shatter, like a very dry shatter because it was already very dry. But the CBN became like red swirls in the golden rosin, or let's say it was dark gold getting towards amber, but you could see the really reddish swirls from that component. And it was pleasant. It had a very much a blood orange kind of flavor to it. I kind of enjoyed it, but obviously it changes. I don't have a hard and fast way. I think there's different ways to store slash cure hash, and I keep a lot of mine just in Ziploc bags in a jar in the refrigerator. And I find that even after a couple years, they still taste very, very much of the variety they're made with. So I do have years worth, like, since I've been doing the pool bud the last 5 summers, there's I've got hash from every plant still, and I just dip into it and pack. I like to just have a nice bowl of loose hash now and then and have a nice, flavor of that. Sometimes I'll squish it, and sometimes I'll press it, and if it's been pressed, I like to wrap it tight in cellophane so it's really got, the glass edge when you peel it off later, and roll it up tight. And some of my favorite chars was from my, partner's son, a Swiss gentleman who would go to Milano and then hike another 2 or 3 days above that, and he would go there and stay for a month and rub, and he would put his hash he would bring it back to Switzerland eventually, but he would have it, like this year's was 15 a gram. If it was a year old, it was 20 a gram. If it was 2 years old, it was 25 a gram. And he would roll it up, wrap it up tight, and put that charis under a rock on the mountain and bury it. Like, he would bury it and put a rock over it. And that underground cure, even though it's so wrapped up in everything, unbelievable how much that hash changed. And so it would get absolutely like chocolate after being buried 2 or 3 years. The older pieces that he had buried, they were really incredibly delicious to smoke, and the flavor had evolved a lot from the fresh plant taste. And I think this is hard concept for a lot of the youth to take to the heart today. And there's nothing wrong with fresh flavors, but there is also something to be said for cured flavors. And I know some people just look down at their nose on them just based on color alone. They're like, oh, it's all black, it's gross, and make you sleepy. But some people want to be sleepy. Some people want to relax. You don't always need a stimulating high. Sometimes you want a soothing one. Anyways, it's personal preference. There's not really a right or wrong there. I can appreciate the fresh, I can appreciate the cured, but seal it up, put it in the fridge, put it in the freezer. If you just leave it out, like if you just leave it sitting out at room temperature, you definitely lose the terps a lot faster than if you leave it in the fridge. But if you do it in the freezer and it's not totally sealed already, like with cellophane, then you stand the risk of the getting some frostbite on it, or some freezer burn. So I found that the hash that I've kept in the fridge has probably been my go-to method for a while, is to keep most of it in the fridge. But I do have some in the freezer, but I don't have any outside of the fridge or freezer except for that 2005 lot, which when we pressed it, it was already, I think, 11 years old when I pressed it. So now it's a lot older, and yeah, like 21-year-old hash. That's the oldest hash I have in my cupboard. Actually, I think there's a little tiny jar of it I kept just for shits and giggles here, and I'll grab it right now and pull it out and show you. Oh, so this is definitely past its prime, but you can see that crumbled up. That is literally 21-year-old sweet skunk sift, but it's lost a lot of the character. Like, you wouldn't know it was sweet skunk to smell it, but it is very hashy smelling. It has a hash sheen. It doesn't focus here too well. Oh well, that's what I get for doing this on a webcam. But it's still pleasant. So I like that really old hashy taste once in a while, and it's just a personal thing, whether you like it or not, that's what's right for you. I like it, but, I only keep it now out of curiosity because most of it I'd already pressed for rosin and finished it years ago, but I kept that just so I have some ancient hash. Yeah, you keep it in the fridge. That's that's the way to go, I agree. I think if you really wanted to lace up down for long-term storage, y you get the air out of a container and have it sealed up. You could throw it in the freezer, but if you like dipping into it on the regular, I like to have it in the fridge so it stays fresh. It's losing a few terps. The fridge smells nice when you open it, though. But I don't keep it in a fridge with food, so it's not picking up like onion smells or anything. It's in a dedicated cannabis fridge, which that if I wasn't all plugged in here, I could even show you that sometime. I'll have to take some pictures. Maybe one day we'll do an episode where we just dig through my fridge and freezer and look at all the different jars and bags and stuff that's in there. It's just super fun. Anyway, that's my thoughts on the hash storage. But boy, I can't believe even that I don't go through it a little faster than I do because mostly I just, for my personal here at home in BC, I'm really too far north for really good quality outdoor. But you can get okay outdoor, but you can get great hash from it still. So I still make most of my backyard plants because I don't need pounds of outdoor northern outdoor flower to smoke. I would rather have ounces of outdoor hash and keep a couple ounces of tops to roll with in that. So I enjoy the flower from the backyard, but I know it's not as good as it could be if it was grown further south. But the hash from it's still fantastic, so I don't feel like I'm missing out at all. The fridge episode. Yeah, we will do a fridge episode, that just sounds like fun. The fridge episode will be fun because in the bottom, in the crisper drawer, I have garbage bags of seed. Yeah, like you, most of my outdoor is hash. That's the Pacific Northwest, my man. We're too far north to grow really exceptional flower on reliable basis because the sun starts getting further away towards the end of the summer. The light gets weaker. Plus, we're far enough north that we have very long days in the middle of the summer, and that inhibits the flowering. And by the time the days are getting short and the nights are getting long, it's happening really quickly. And the plant doesn't really have, a long stretch of hot, dry weather for flowering. And it's getting cooler all the time. The light's getting weaker. You start to get your fall rains. I get away with my cheater outdoor, which means I just keep the rain off it by pulling it under my south facing back deck. So the sun's low in the sky at least, so it's shooting in under the deck. So they're getting that sun, but they don't get rained on. And that allows me to leave them out till Halloween, which is when most of them seem to be happy to come down around here. I've left some out till Valentine's even just for fun. But yeah, I feel you. Growing outdoor in the Northwest, hash is the way to go. Light depths look fantastic here. Anything I do with light depth here, I'm super happy with it. Visually, it looks like indoor as far as most people would be concerned. But the full season stuff that's really low effort, no cost, no cost and low effort because I build it out of my compost. And I have bought stuff for soil amendments like dolomite lime or bone meal and that, but I haven't had to buy them in years because I've mixed up pots with living soil with lots of wood or stalks in it to break down over time, and there's lots of worms in it. And I just replant. I just top dress those pots in the spring. Then usually once midsummer, I'll top dress them again and then just water them. And sometimes I like to let the water sit out so it's not straight from the tap, and I'll usually throw something in there to start making the water into a tea. And I have like some big mint patches, all 10 different kinds of mint I put in this one zone a while ago. So now I just have excess mint. I'll chop up the mint into the 5-gallon pails, top them up with tap water, and leave them for a week till it's kind of a green mint tea. I might throw aloe leaves in there or anything else that's just laying around the garden. And I throw that in there and it keeps the water very lively. So when you it's nicer than just feeding it tap water, especially from the hose, as I find that tap water itself has a bit of a flavor in the herb later, but hose water as well. Like it's not right to the tap; it's going through a vinyl hose first. So I'd like to get away from that ideally. And use some hoses are more inert than others, I guess. And some of them will give like a little vinyl off taste, like the taste of tap water as a kid or the taste of hose water. It's not necessarily the cleanest of clean. Like, sure, it might be potable water, but I would rather have water that's not safe for me to drink, but it gives the plants more juice and puts more life in the soil. Nice. You grow on the edge of a fir forest, the ecotone. The soil's amazing. Yeah, I bet. I remember in the tropics, somebody told me that the best soil you could use for grass, in their opinion, was taking the soil from the bottom of an old mango tree where there's been 100 years of mangoes rotting there over time. And that soil, when you grew in the mango tree soil, they thought that they had just stellar results. I thought, that's interesting. Never tried it, can't validate it or anything, but seems like a way to go. If you're down there, it'd be fun to try. There was a mango tree at the farm where I was working for about 7 years, and it was a very old mango tree, probably in that century range, but I never did, scrape up soil underneath it. The Man, I saw a papaya tree down there that was apparently a couple centuries old. It blew my mind. I had no idea that they could get that big. It was like a massive walnut tree or something, and we were horse riding on this finca, and we were just walking under this huge tree with papayas on the ground everywhere, and the horse was just squishing the papayas as you walk, like squish, squish. It was really, I was like, this tree is huge. I didn't know papayas got this big. How old is it? And they're asking the guide, and he was like, it's got to be a couple hundred years old or a few hundred years old. And Colombia was, there's been people there a long time. So Lord knows. I don't remember how old that tree was, just being stunned at it. But I could see why the soil underneath that tree might be different than the soil not underneath that tree, because there was just literally tons and tons of fruit rotting into that soil for years. Fun stuff. So if you have another question, my man, you let me know. Otherwise, I want to touch on one that somebody had brought up last month that I didn't have a good answer for. Okay, I look forward to seeing the pics. So anyway, the other question I want to touch on, somebody had asked me at the last one of these if I had any experience with autos and recessives, or using recessive breeding for autos. And I hadn't given it a lot of thought because I've never been an auto breeder. So I sort of said, I'm the wrong guy to ask about autos. But I thought I should, learn something about it myself. So I did a bit of homework and found out, okay, auto flowering trait is a recessive trait, and it does work well to breed them two recessives to get reliable autos, and it can take 4 generations or so it, to work it out, because you'll have, if you're crossing an auto and a photo, and you've got, let's say, a large P for the photo and a small one for the, or a small a. I mean, it doesn't really matter how you like to do your labeling that way, but if you were making the classic Punnett square, where you'd have the uppercase, lowercase for the dominant and recessive traits. So the ones that are heterozygous have both, and they'll have a recessive for the auto, but you need to get both parents with the recessive to get a homozygous recessive outcome. So you'd have the two small letters, whether you're using P's or A's. But the point being is it is a recessive trait. So it's best dealt with in a recessive breeding strategy. So that was something I learned that I hadn't looked into, but I looked into it because somebody had asked at the last one. So yeah. So my friend, if you've got any more questions, fire another one over here. It's been an hour and you've asked some good questions, and it's been fun having a wee chat here. But if not, we'll call it a day and everybody can enjoy the rest of it. So thanks a ton, man, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Everybody, thanks for coming out and listening, and I look forward to putting some more episodes together soon. I got to play catch up because I missed a few weeks, but I also did meet a bunch of people that I wanted to have on for the conversation series, and I'm going to do a few more topics that are on my list of topics to cover alone. So I'll really try and pound it for the next week or so and put out or do a recording probably every day or every other day for the next couple of weeks, so that there can be a steady stream of more stuff coming. Anyways, thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate you coming out, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care.